Hello everyone, thank you for coming. Welcome to Tech Talk number 16, last Tech Talk of 2018. They saved the best for last. Praveen will announce the next Tech Talk for 2019 after the end of today's session. So I would like to introduce to you Dr. Krista Mattern. Krista comes to us from the College Board. Krista came to ACT in 2014, and she's currently Senior Director of Validity and Efficacy and the team in the IRDC Department, Innovative Research Design and Consulting. Let me tell you my favorite Krista story. So Krista was born in Massachusetts, and Krista and Jeremy was there, and they went to a Yankees game, and Krista wore her Red Sox hat, and somehow a beer was dumped on top of her head from above. Just to illustrate how gracious and nice Krista is, she said, "It could have been an accident."
You don't spill a $15 beer.
So please welcome Krista Mattern. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Is my audio good online? I know there's a bunch of folks online.
Yeah, a lot. Yes, we are okay.
Great. So I'm really excited to see so many in attendance and online. I feel like I may have guilted you into coming based on my title. And so I feel kind of bad, but I do believe that it's true. I think efficacy is so crucial for our mission, and I'm going to talk a lot about that today, and I hope that you all leave this room believing that as well. Another point that I want to make clear is that it doesn't fall solely in my department. So my department is validity and efficacy research, but it really is going to take a village, and we work with a lot of partners. All of the research departments, test development, ACT Next. We've been working with marketing research, looking at customer value analysis, working with EIS. We need our data to do this research. Client relations helps recruit partners. So it's really all of us, and it's really all towards achieving our mission. So what was the impetus for creating an efficacy framework? Why have myself, my team been working on drafting a report that it is finally done now. I'm still tweaking it, but if you want it, I am happy to share it with you if you want to learn more. But why are we doing this work? Well, for me, it really became evident. If you sit in any meeting with Martin and he talks about the vision and our transformation, that we're not just an assessment company, but a learning, measurement, and navigation company, we really need an efficacy framework to support this transformation. And really, it becomes, it's really important as we increase our learning products. If we add more and more learning products to our product portfolio, we need an efficacy framework to guide research activities around this work. So what should we be doing to support our learning products to show that we can support the claims we're making? Taking a step back, when we were more an assessment company before Martin came on board and going through this transformation, validity was king, and we needed to show validity evidence. And if you think about validity, it's very broad in scope, and I'll get into different types of validity evidence, but if you think about it in terms of learner outcomes or important outcomes, what we're trying to do with our research is show that our tests, performance on our tests, scores on that test are related to important outcomes. So they're predictive, they're correlated, and we've done tons of research, and we have really strong validity evidence for our products and services. So you can think of some examples. We've done a ton of research showing students who take the ACT and perform better, they earn higher scores, they're more likely to go to college. They're more likely to be successful in college in terms of earning good grades or persisting and ultimately earning a degree. Our team created the ACT college readiness benchmarks. We wanted to provide a signal to students, parents, educators to inform policy about the level of academic preparation and knowledge you need to be successful once in college. We've done lots of work in the workplace setting too, so looking at work keys and whether scores or NCRC levels are related to employment, how quickly you can find employment, whether you perform better once on the job and are retained. And so this is all very important and very needed when we're thinking about assessments. I think what becomes clear, and it's been clear for me for a while, but just going over that slide, is that there's somewhat of a disconnect between our product portfolio and our mission. So as we all know, our mission is to help individuals achieve educational and workplace success. Tests are really good at predicting who or who will not achieve success, who will succeed. I would argue they're not so good at helping people succeed. And I'm not saying tests aren't useful. They're super useful, and they're good at providing feedback to individuals. You take the test, you get a score report. But it's really what you do with that information. And we know, based on talking to our customers, they don't do a lot with it. What we need to do is help them connect it to learning resources if they're not on track. If they're even on track, how do we propel their learning? And so it's really coupling that learning and measurement together if we really want to be successful. So that's clearly where we're going and very much aligned with Martin's vision, and so I think we're in very good hands. And so as we transform to a learning, measurement, and navigation company, we still need validity evidence. That's very important still, but efficacy evidence becomes critical. And again, we can talk about efficacy evidence in a lot of different domains and what we mean by that. But when we talk about learner outcomes, again, now we need to show that we're improving them. We're not just related to important outcomes, but we actually are having an effect. So we already have learning products out there, and some examples would be, our users who use College Ready, they're less likely to need remedial coursework in college. They're more likely to succeed in their first level English or math courses. We have a lot of test prep products out there, so using those test prep products actually improve your performance when you take the ACT. WorkKeys curriculum, does that help you improve your WorkKeys scores? And then even more so, what we want to show is, because you've gained those knowledge and skills, that you're actually better prepared to perform on the job and be successful. And so you can clearly see what kind of evidence and what types of studies we would need to do are very different. I have been in a lot of meetings, and I think there's a perception that maybe we don't need as rigorous evidence when we're talking about learning products, because they're not typically used for high stakes. And clearly we need different types of evidence. We don't really need to equate our learning products. We don't need to do some of that type of research activity, but we're kind of having to do more rigorous research or holding ourselves to a higher bar, because we're making claims, right? We're saying if you use our product, we are improving an outcome for you. And so we have to show that. And it's really important, and again, going back to our mission, that's why I think efficacy research is critical. Because we talk about this with assessments. One of our strengths, our reputation is built on science and based on data, and that still needs to hold true for our learning companies. And we can get into a problem or not into a place we want to be if our claims aren't backed by science or evidence. And really, what we want to be is we don't want to be these guys. So I went online to see some products where I didn't think they really delivered on claims. And so you can think about the holidays are coming up. Maybe you're thinking about buying something for your kids. This looks like a really cool water hockey toy you might want to buy your kids. So you buy it, and then on Christmas Day, maybe you want to buy your first pool for your kids, your 3 kids. They all fit in there. Mom looks like she's about to jump in too. Again, your kid's really excited about soccer, wants to improve their skills. You buy them equipment to help them do so at home. So again, we don't want to oversell what we're claiming. There's 2 more that I thought were highly relevant. Again, the holiday season's coming up. You may celebrate Christmas. You may want to put a tree up in your home. So you don't want a real tree. You buy an artificial tree, and then you take it out of the box. And then finally, who doesn't like chocolate? Here's a chocolate of St. Nick. To be honest, I thought it was the Pope at first. St. Nick, but then yeah, I think that's the Easter bunny. So we don't want to want to disappoint customers. We don't want to tarnish our brand. We want our claims to be backed by science. And this has implications. If people don't believe in our products, if they don't do what they say, we could lose market. The market revenue could go down. We don't have as large of a market. We could lose customers. There's other implications. There could be legal implications. Who's heard of Lumosity? So they're an app. They have games online. It's really they actually make a lot of claims. They want to improve brain functioning. They call it the #1 brain training app. Well, back in 2016, they were sued because they were over-claiming. They said their apps could help sharpen performance in everyday life and protect against cognitive decline. And they had to pay $2 million for that. So we also don't want to get in that kind of situation. So to make sure we don't get in that type of situation, we need to do efficacy research. And for validity research, we have a lot of resources and we have our standards. We always reference back our standards for educational and psychological testing when we talk about validity research. It's a great resource. It's the gold standard. And sometimes when we get pushback, we say we need to do an equating study or we need to do this other study. We can point to this and say, this is what you should be doing to support your products and services. This is the evidence you should be providing. Unfortunately, such a resource doesn't really exist for efficacy research, and really, again, was the impetus for developing this white paper that I've been working on and sharing it with you today. So I know we're supposed to be talking about efficacy, but I think it's really important to give a little context to talk about validity, and also I'm trying to make the case that they go hand in hand. So I'll provide a little context about what we mean by validity and the type of research that we do to support validity claims we want to make and evidence that we need to collect. And so on this slide, you can see the standards does a great job. They provide a definition. So validity refers to the degree to which evidence and theory support the interpretation of test scores for proposed uses of tests. And then how do we know that it's doing that? Well, we can collect evidence, and they outline different sources of evidence. So there might be evidence based on test content to support why you would use a test for a particular use. We can talk about response processes, internal structure, relation to other variables, and consequences of testing. So on this slide, it gives examples of research activities that would support or elicit these types of evidence. And so I think it's sometimes helpful, we're talking research talk now, to provide examples, but you can think about the ACT. So we say ACT is a measure of college readiness, right? Well, if it's a measure of college readiness, what should be the test blueprint? What should we measure? And so we can provide evidence based on content, and so we do this. So every 3 to 5 years, we have a national curriculum survey, and we actually ask professors, what are the most important knowledge and skills students need once they enter college? And that really drives our test blueprint. Evidence based on response processes. When we're creating new items, test development often does COG labs or DICA labs. We want to make sure the items are eliciting those cognitive processes that we intended them to elicit. And so a student can come in and take an ACT item that we've newly created and talk aloud about how they're answering it. So we know that they're using the cognitive processes we want them to when they're solving a fraction of problem or a geometry problem or an algebra problem. Internal structure. How do we know the ACT math test is measuring what we say it's measuring? We look at the reliability, we do reliability analysis, factor analysis, we do differential item functioning. Relationship to other variables. This is really the bread and butter of my team. Again, if the ACT is a college readiness measure, we want to show that it's related to performance once in college. And so showing that predictive validity, showing that ACT scores are related to course grade. And then consequences of testing. You can think of, we actually do a little efficacy research with tests, not a lot, but you could think about when there was a huge push for statewide adoption of the ACT. One important research question was, does providing the ACT for all students improve college enrollment rates? That is, there's a belief that there's a financial barrier for low-income students to take the ACT. So if everyone's taking it, can that help improve college enrollment? And we've done some of that research. What's important to note, a couple things. One, this is a example, not a complete list, but it also isn't, you don't need every single study when you're doing creating a validity argument. Some pieces of validity evidence will be more important depending on how you're using the test. And so using the ACT for college admissions, you really want to show that it's related to how students are going to perform on your campus, because that's who you're trying to select, those who are ready to succeed. You can think about another current movement in the educational landscape where states are using ACT for accountability, and then other types of evidence are becoming more critical. Content evidence. You want to make sure that ACT actually covers what you're teaching in the classroom for it to be a good use of that. And then you can also think of tests as a tool to evaluate an intervention and whether it's appropriate to do that, which is similar to accountability, but I was going to drill down on teacher accountability. And again, the evidence that's most important will depend on the use case. So if you want to use ACT for teacher accountability and the teacher teaches history, that might not be a very appropriate use. So again, you want to make sure that the test is sensitive to be able to measure learning or growth based on some intervention. And I think that really just shows you how efficacy and validity need to go hand in hand. So I want to transition to talk more about efficacy and how we can create efficacy arguments for our products. And I wanted to use this visual. I'm sure this is very familiar to most, if not all of you. Martin uses this representation to talk again about his vision and the 3 pillars. Here I've highlighted 2 of the pillars or circles, learning and measurement. And what I argue in our paper is that really efficacy is the intersection of the 2, and that again, validity and efficacy must go hand in hand. And what I mean by that is we need learning tools to improve learning, but how do we know they improve learning? Well, we need to measure that. So what I'm saying is efficacy is quantified through the measurement of learning. And so if you need both the learning tool and the measurement tool, then you need a validity and an efficacy argument, and how those go hand in hand needs to be very well articulated to make sure you can actually evaluate how well the learning tool is working. So building off the standards, what we wanted to do was kind of provide a parallel framework to talk about efficacy. So we wanted to both define what we thought, how we should be talking about efficacy, so the level set, what we mean by efficacy, but then also identify sources of evidence to help build an efficacy argument. And so here, as it says on the screen, efficacy refers to the degree to which evidence, rationale, and theory support the claim that a learning tool improves the intended learner outcomes. So again, we're improving outcomes, not just predicting outcomes. And what's also explicit in this definition is that there is an intended learner outcome. So before you even create a learning product, you need to know what outcome you're trying to impact or what customer problem you're trying to solve. So that really should be at the center of focus. So what are our customers' needs? What are their pain points? Is a high school struggling with graduating their seniors? Are too many, as a college struggling, there are too many students taking remediation? And then once you know what outcome or what problem you're trying to solve, you should build the learning tool that best serves that. So really efficacy by design. So before even getting into evidence, since outcomes are paramount in our definition, we wanted to adapt what we know from the IO literature, from industrial organizational psychology. There's been a lot of work done on evaluating training programs in the workforce and their impact on job performance. Kirkpatrick's evaluation model is shown up here, and we're adapting this to be used to help support efficacy research here at ACT. And what's really important here is that they show different levels of outcome, with the most proximal at the foundation or base of the pyramid going to more distal outcomes at the apex. And each one is a prerequisite really to achieving higher levels of success or outcomes, where the ultimate goal is to get the results we want. but we can't get there if we don't achieve these lower levels. And so reaction is whether or not an individual finds the learning event or learning product engaging, relevant, really whether or not they're going to use the product. Because if they're not going to use the product, then we're not going to find efficacy evidence. And so the next level is learning. So what are the knowledge and skills, other characteristics, you can think of SEL, that we're trying to impart on individuals, and whether or not it actually achieves that goal. Are they improving their math knowledge? Are they improving their ELA skills? Behavior, you can also think of transferability. And so what we don't want to do is create a learning product where it looks like students are learning, they're doing better over time, but it's just because they're getting the same items or memorization, but it's not true learning. And so then when they try to apply those skills in a different setting, such as in a classroom or on another assessment, you don't see that they do any better. And so does it transfer to real world applications? And then the results, the outcomes that we really hope to impact. And so you can think, let's say test prep, we have AOP. Is it actually engaging? Are students using it? Are they staying in the system? Do they find it relevant? Then are they improving the skills? Then can they apply those skills on the ACT, but also in the classroom, so that they do better in college. They apply those skills in their first year courses that keep them in college and have downstream consequences. So thinking about outcomes as that kind of hierarchy, what we've done is identify sources of evidence that would help support that we're actually achieving those outcomes. We've used what we've learned from the standards and validity evidence, and also modified it based on Kirkpatrick's model, and have these 7 types of evidence. We talk about user experience, content, learning, use and implementation, relationship to other variables, results, and impact. And so those are the 7 types of evidence and how they feed to support that we're achieving those 4 outcomes that we just discussed in Kirkpatrick's model. So you can see that user experience research, what we find from our customers in terms of their satisfaction with their product, if they're find it engaging, is it boring or is it interactive, that's going to provide support for reaction, that base level outcome. The content will also do that, right? So if you come to use a learning product and it's not aligned to what you're learning in the classroom, you're not going to find it very engaging. You came to learn calculus and it's talking about addition. And so that will feed the user experience, but also provide support for learning. You can think about personalization as well. If it's adapting to you, then it might be more engaging because you're not focusing on resources that aren't relevant. It's really focusing on what you need to learn, which again will improve the user experience, but it might amplify learning too, because you're not spending time on things you already have learned, so you're using your time efficiently. I do want to highlight use and implementation, because this is kind of very relevant to learning products, not so much when we think about assessments, at least the ACT and a standardized assessment. So how individuals use the ACT is all the same. They come in and they take it, and it's a very standardized experience. That's what we call it, standardized testing. Learning tools, that's not the case. How individuals interact with the learning tool is very much dependent on one individual. So I could go into ACT Academy and spend 30 minutes each day in preparation for my test event that's 2 months out, and someone else could go in the night before and cram. And so how they're interacting with the product is very different. You can think about our B2B customers, those who are buying test prep for their school. What are they doing to support the use of that test prep product? Are they just telling them to use it, or telling them that they bought it and that they can use it at home? Are they devoting resources at school? And so understanding the context in which it's deployed is really important to evaluate not just if our learning products are being effective, but how, so that we can provide best practices and recommendations. Steve?
So One question, Krista, I guess, is I really like the framework so far. The question, though, that is in my mind is, this seems to make sense as we apply to entire platforms or tools, you know, but there's obviously a lot of discussion about efficacy at multiple levels. Like, you could be talking about efficacy as it relates to a single video or a single resource. It could be a whole course, it could be a whole platform or tool. Like, can we apply this same approach at all levels, so that down to a single piece of content all the way up to a platform, a complete system or tool or course, or is this mostly intended to be used just at like the platform level?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it can be applied. I don't think all the sources of evidence would be applicable. And so in terms of like implementation or use, because at lower levels, you're really looking at an individual resource. But I think it is flexible enough. And as I said, with validity, depending on what you're evaluating, your research question and how it's being used, what types of evidence that are most relevant will vary. And because I get to this a little bit too, because there's the system level view, but then within the system, so we want to evaluate, this is a product we're providing, is it efficacious? And then if it is, what's the best way to use it? But then within the system, to your point, we can tweak, we can provide the most efficacious learning resources or the sequence of which they're provided. And one example I did want, it's in the next slide, is to talk about like the RAD API. Like within ACT Academy, can we improve efficacy by learning analytics, by learning science, by providing recommendations? And so thinking about it at that more granular level, not just the systems level, because I think both are important. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think so. I might have a follow-up question at the end.
That's great. So this, again, just as I did with validity, I wanted to provide some like concrete examples of types of research activities or studies that we may conduct that would elicit different types of evidence. And so I think two big takeaways. They're not the same list as the validity slide. And so this has important implications as we think about comprehensive labor planning or looking at the skills we have within house, because you are required to do different kinds of study. If you look at user experience, you can think about UX research or A/B testing or these different types of studies that aren't needed with standardized tests that are really, really important for learning products, because I made this point in the paper, there's a lot of learning products out there. And so we need to make sure that we have customers coming to us and not to some other competitor. And so how do we engage them? How do we make our product the one that they want to use? And do we have the skill set to do that type of research? And then I provide other examples for content, personalization, and the other sources. This also highlights, again, it's not just my team, clearly, like Fiona in market research, we've been looking a lot at customer value analysis and working with them, working with ACT Next, working with test development. This skill set and expertise that's needed crosses many departments. In an earlier slide, I showed two of the circles or Venn diagram and made the case that the intersection of learning and measurement really represents efficacy. And I would argue that really it's all three, in the intersection of the three, where we can amplify efficacy. And I think about it, and it's kind of to Steve's point, I think a lot of people, when they think about navigation, they think about it at more of a macro level. What data can we provide to a student to help them pick a major, to pick a college, to even pick a resource? But once they're within a platform or within a learning ecosystem within ACT Academy, can we use our data, our research, to amplify learning through navigation? And by navigation, now I mean more than micro level. And we're navigating an individual through learning content, and maybe unbeknownst to them. So they've looked at a resource, they've answered some items, and based on that data that we're collecting, we can recommend what they should look at next to optimize their time with the learning product, so they're focusing on what's most relevant to them. So I started the conversation really saying, well, we have validity evidence, and then we have efficacy evidence, but I think fundamental or imperative that we integrate the two if we really want to be successful. We need both. And you can't, if you have a really great learning product, but you can't show that it's great, we'll be at a disadvantage. And I think that's implicit in our thinking here at ACT. If you just look at our product portfolio, we're already kind of doing that. For all of our assessment solutions, we have learning solutions to supplement that. So you take a test, and you don't do so well, what resources can we provide? And so we were doing that, but it's kind of piecemeal, and it's a parallel to the holistic framework. We always knew other constructs were important, that behavioral skills were important, and we were developing these things, but we didn't have an overarching framework to help make sure that the next product we develop is designed with efficacy in mind, and it fits into this framework, and being more explicit about that. So I think we're already really ahead of the game, but it's just putting a little structure around there so that when we design new products, that we're doing it with efficacy in mind. So with that in mind, I tried to create this visual that's probably an eyesore, but to show this system-wise approach that you need both the measurement and the learning to be able to again, demonstrate that our learning products are efficacious, but also it's imperative as we think about the Kanban process and think about not just creating the best next product and launching it, but launching it out to the market and letting it sink or swim, but having more of an iterative process as we learn more about our products and what's working and what's not working to improve on them so that they are improving our outcomes. And so, real quickly, if you look at the right-hand side, what we have is the impact or the outcomes. So I think it's imperative that we always think of the customer problem or the outcome we're trying to improve before we even think about a new product or design. So what are we trying to help our customers with? And I've listed some outcomes or indicators of success, both in education and workplace. And then once we're crystal clear about what we're trying to help improve, then we can think about creating an assessment that would actually predict or be a good indicator of whether or not we will achieve that outcome. So again, using the ACT example, if the problem we're trying to help solve is to improve college readiness, what knowledge and skills do you need to be college ready? And so that should drive the content, the blueprint of the assessment. And so again, how do we do that? We have the National Curriculum Survey. Faculty are telling us what they need to know and be able to do, and that drives what is assessed on our test. We can check to make sure, do the faculty really know what students need to know to be able to succeed, by looking at whether or not when you actually take the test that you do well in college based on, it's actually predictive of whether or not you do well. So you can see that feedback loop. Once we're confident that we know which knowledge and skills are most important, then we can develop a learning tool that would actually improve those knowledge and skills. So again, you can see the content evidence driving back to the learning product or solution to help determine what types of learning resources you want to have in your learning product. And again, the feedback loop here could be, you're in the learning product, how you're performing in there, is it related to an assessment, a measurement of those knowledge and skills, so that feedback loop. I've also included the other sources of evidence. So in addition to content, whether or not you're going to learn is going to be related to whether you're engaged, amplified, whether it's personalized, and how it's used and implemented, which all lead to learning. And this is supposed to demonstrate that the more learning that occurs in the system, the larger impact it will have on the ultimate outcome. So if you use the system not very much and you don't learn that much, we wouldn't expect for a big impact on some outcome or result that we expect to see. And then finally, I have on the very left of the screen a baseline measurement of the same knowledge, skills, characteristics that you want to measure, that you want to impact in your learning tool. And so again, The content should be aligned to this post-intervention measurement. What we do, you can take test prep as an example. What we like to look at is what was their test scores prior to the using AOP or OPL, and then looking at their post scores and looking at those score gains. You can get around a baseline measurement if you have experimental designs and hope that your randomization worked, and then you can look at the different groups. The one that got the treatment, do they have higher test scores after the treatment? But again, all of these evidence of content, relation to other variables, all these sources of validity evidence are still important. One thing I do want to highlight is my team has been hard at work to start some of these studies, and we've been putting out some recent research findings to support the efficacy of our products and learning products. So Edgar Sanchez has really been our lead for ACT test prep, and he's recently put out 2 studies, one on OPL, and here this one shows that students who use OPL perform better on the ACT as compared to those who do not. And a really cool finding that he showed was it actually, the score increase was largest for low-income students. And so that was really great because there's this belief out there that test prep only helps the rich, and that it's not a good tool for low-income students, and we showed actually the opposite. He looked at AOP and again showed there's evidence that use of AOP does improve score gains as compared to non-AOP users. Ty Cruz, he's been our lead for College Ready, and he just released a report. So looking at whether or not you use College Ready and your performance, or whether or not you passed your first college level English composition course. And we did find positive support for the College Ready users compared to the other groups. Jeff Allen recently did an efficacy study on pre-ACT on ACT performance. So for schools that administer the pre-ACT, do they see better ACT performance compared to non-pre-ACT schools? And again, found support. Jeff Steedle's been looking at WorkKey's curriculum, and it's going to come out probably later this month. And Scott Payne and I are going to sit down with Steve and Alina to talk about research we could do for ACT Academy. And so I just wanted to highlight that there's already a lot of great work out there to help support our learning products. The last thing in the paper that I discussed is what I've talked about has not talked anything about study design. It talks about evidence, what kind of evidence we want to be able to collect. So if we wanted to do an efficacy study, that could look like a lot of different things. So if we want to say AOP prepares you better for the ACT, we could do a survey. We could ask people, did you feel like it prepared you well? Or we could actually do an experiment, and we could assign people to use AOP using random assignment and look at it. And so depending on your study design, going all the way from qualitative to experimental, you can make different types of claims. With causal claims, we're more confident. We can say this product actually was the reason why you improved. With other designs, we can say maybe it's related to outcomes, but we're not as confident as if it's the causal mechanism. And this is important for a lot of reasons. And I'm not claiming that we always need an experiment. But there's what I've tried to outline are guiding principles or criteria to determine what kind of study you may want to design. And here are the different criteria. So the use case. So how is the product being used may determine what kind of study you want to design. The stage of the product life cycle. So I know you're all aware of the Kanban. I wouldn't say that you need a randomized control trial in the pre-funnel. You want to just show some evidence. You don't want to kill an idea before it gets off the ground. But as you get further along and you're investing more resources, you may want stronger evidence to make sure that the learning product is actually efficacious. desired strength of validity or efficacy claims and funding. I'll get back to that. Intended audience. Paul Nichols has done a lot of great research in this area. Different types of evidence or claims may be more persuasive to different audiences. So I'm not saying we don't need the other type of evidence or claims, but you could think of parents and they're really struggling to find a resource that's going to help their child, and what may be most persuasive to them is other parents' ratings. And so that evidence may be very crucial and persuasive for them to buy the product. We still, I would hope, want to show through other types of research studies that it actually does improve outcomes, but thinking about audience in mind when you highlight different types of evidence. And then you can think about mergers and acquisitions and what types of evidence you would want to see through due diligence. And so I think this is really important and something I would like to talk more with Bob Walker, Jason Carlson, or Simi. When we're in the position of due diligence, because we're not going to maybe develop all our learning products in-house, what do we want to see? What kind of evidence do we want to see so that we're making wise investments? So, desired strength of validity evidence, validity or efficacy evidence, and funding. I think this is really important. We want to do all this cool research because we think it's cool and it's important, and we do want to show that we can support our claims. But I think if you think of it from a product side, we also want adoption, right? We want states to use our products, we want districts to use our products, schools. And so to facilitate that or to promote that, you need levels. You need different levels of evidence. Under ESSA, they talk about different levels of evidence and what they like to see when they're talking about interventions or educational practices. What Works Clearinghouse has requirements. They have their own standards about what studies they'll actually include when they're evaluating an intervention. And to this point, in 2017, What Works Clearinghouse decided to do a study of the effectiveness of Aspire, and they released this report. I wouldn't really call it a report because there was nothing there. What they found is that there was no studies that met their inclusion criteria. And when I talk about inclusion criteria, it's the last two. They want to see quasi-experimental, randomized control. They want to make sure that you can make causal claims. And since we didn't have any studies that use those methodologies, nothing was included and they could draw no conclusions. So if we want What Works Clearinghouse to be showcasing some of our products, getting it out there for states and districts to be adopting, then we need some of these research studies. So that is all I have. I would love to open it up to any questions. I think Steve had another question.
You know, maybe I'll try to expand a little bit on what I was trying to ask. When we think about, I really like the idea these more distal claims are more important, the outcomes ultimately, but they take a lot of time to become a thing. You know, you have to get something all the way through college in order to make that. But when you get closer to the other side of like product development, platform development, like content is always changing within typically like learning platforms. New features are being assessed and developed and thought about, and you need efficacy to be working in that tight loop of like agile development as you're thinking about new ideas, looking at new content, trying new things. Like you can't always connect to the ground truth of like these distal outcomes.
Right.
And so like efficacy needs to work at multiple like time spans, at multiple abstractions. And so it just feels like we need multiple frameworks, like something that works within a product loop on like, did this new feature we developed work? Are we gonna go forward with that beta feature or not? You know, what about this particular video? Is this video helpful in teaching this concept or not? Like, so I guess that's what I'm struggling in my brain is just how do we deal with validity and efficacy at the glacier levels of like giving the pre-ACT or down these other more like fine-grained pieces as well.
Right. No, and I think it's clearly both. And when you think about use and implementation, what we want to do, again, I said, we don't want to just say if our learning product is effective, but why or how, and that helps not only to provide best practices to our users, but also to iterate and what features are important. And so when you think about Academy, again, it's again, features within the system, but also how the student is interacting with the system, and if we can manipulate that to improve better, more short-term outcomes, because I agree to your point, what we want to be able to do, because we don't want to wait 5 years, we want to be able to show this is having an immediate outcome on this thing that we think is important, let's just say their test scores, or even measurement opportunities within the system. And then if we have a cool RAD API, we can actually amplify that, and that's really cool. And then I feel like you can piecemeal a validity and efficacy argument. We show within the system that we can amplify learning. We know based on how they do in this system that's correlated to test scores, regardless if they used AOP, we know that test scores are related to performance in college. We know that performance in college is related to actually staying in college and graduating, and kind of like piecemeal it. I mean, ultimately, we would still want to show that it wasn't artificial gains, that the learning truly did occur in the learning product and follow these students, but I think we can make a compelling case while we wait on that other types of evidence. But I think it is both at the macro and micro level that we want to think about efficacy.
Kind of on the heels, I think it's kind of on the heels of what Steve was asking. When we talk about efficacy, we can talk about it, hey, we're developing this great API, there's substantial efficacy evidence right now. But as not just the API changes, but also as the landscape changes, what kind of monitoring is going to be implemented so that we know, even at time zero, things were working great. If things change over time, we'll want to know.
Right, right. No, that's a great point. And actually, I don't discuss that at all in the paper. And we do that with tests too, but they don't change as rapidly. And I think that's a really good point. I know what we would love to do is we build out LEAP and data platforms where we can build in some of these checks and balances. I know we're already talking about it in terms of psychometrics. So as this data comes in, we can automatically evaluate, like, are the items still functioning the same way as we thought, and evaluate it. But I would love to do that with learning analytics and predictive analytics too, so that we do know we can continually monitor that.
So I'd like to build on Steve's question too. If you think of this as an argument, both validity and efficacy is an argument that's built with a sequence of claims, and there's a distal claim, or more or less distal claim. There's also intermediate claims, and you can address evidence. You have to have evidence for each of those intermediate claims, and if any of these links are shown to not be efficacious or not be valid, then your overall distal claim breaks down. It's easy to show with a test where you have claims about an item level, items eliciting the right evidence. You have claims about scoring, you're scoring the right kind of behavior. You have claims about measurement models that you're aggregating in the right way to support inferences. Standard setting was done in a way that supports the performance level interpretation. So it's easy to show there with, I think we have less experience with learning products, but again, you've got claims about the interface, you have claims about the instructional experiences, you have all of these claims that have to support the overall claim of learning. So each of those claims, there's ways to collect evidence. I think the framework is flexible enough to do that. We just have to realize and take the time to break down the claims and look at what evidence would support each of those claims.
Any other questions?
I have another question then. We talked a little bit about the link between efficacy validity framework and marketing. I know you touched on product life cycle, but why it would be important for our marketing efforts.
Right. So there's Deb, I was just going to say your name.
Thanks, Paul.
Right. Well, it goes back to the slide that we're meant to be entertaining, but really, and they were entertaining, like, I think they were, but, right, we wanted to be able to, you know, do this research so that there's science behind it, but we also want to be able to sell our products and help support marketing. And I think some researchers get uncomfortable with saying that we're helping with marketing or helping with sales, but I'm not uncomfortable at all with it. If we think our products do what they say they do and they're backed by the research that we've done, then I think people should be using our products and it should help support sales and growth. Yeah, but Deb has been awesome. Like some of those pretty infographics, she helped take our not pretty research and make them pretty.
Any questions?
Well, I guess I was gonna go. So this is Deb.
Yes.
So this is Deb. And one of the great things about working with research is that you guys give the reason to believe that the products do what they say they do. So it's not so much that you're selling the products, you're actually just giving them the reason to make it seem that I buy this assessment for my students, it's going to do what we, ACT, claim it does, and your research backs it up. So by working with marketing, you're not working with the devil, really. You're just working with good people that are trying to help Barton make our margins, because no margins, no mission. So marketing's good people, right, Jeff? Jeff says yes.
Thank you.
We quote you, Jeff.
Any more questions?
Yeah. I'm supposed to
Yeah,
get
can you use
the
mic
microphone here.
because these Zoom participants, they want to also hear.
This may be more of a validity than an efficacy question, but one of the things that I've been taught here for more than 20 years is that ACT predicts the ability to earn certain grades in certain first-year courses, and that there's language that trips off the tongue. But there have been a couple of recent studies that you've done about the effect of the higher ACT scores on both persistence and completion of college, and you referenced those briefly today. Is that something that we should be stressing more, both internally and externally? Because if that's one of the messages, it seems a pretty compelling message to me, I don't know that we say that as often as we should.
Right, I definitely think we should be saying it. And we've done a lot of research that shows clearly test scores are more predictive of your grades, but then those grades, if you're not passing your courses, you're either kicked out of school or you decide to leave school because it's not a good fit. And so we do have research showing that. Our HERD that we put out last July, the Higher Ed Research Digest, we have multiple studies showing students who enter college ready are much more likely to graduate. And another thing that can bolster that argument, yeah, test scores are really important, but we're also trying to promote the holistic framework and showing the power of test scores, or the ACT test scores, so the core academic skills and behavioral skills, and using that information to help support student success. So I can share stuff. The HERD is awesome. Everyone should read the HERD.
The audience loves the HERD report,
Yeah.
that higher ed market, because it gives them the.
I don't think that mic works, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I was able to hear on the. But
No, they're muted, otherwise we get an echo.
So this is Deb again. So the HERD report, the feedback we're getting from the market is that the higher ed leaders love that report because it gives them the snippets that they can go and read. So, you know, instead of reading 150 pages, they can read a paragraph and get it to the right people inside their organization that will read that 150-page report. So from a marketing perspective, we're always looking for that quick soundbite that's going to get those leaders that we interact with to get it to the right people that have the time to read the 150-page report, because it's such wonderful, dense information, but people don't have the bandwidth to digest that all. If they can get it to the right people that have the time to do that and are like the spark plugs inside of their organization that will be our champions for ACT, we have a better chance of getting ACT integrated into more schools, into more institutions, into more students, and impacting more, what's our mission? More helping people achieve academic and workplace success. Drop the mic again.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Krista. It's a really very impressive, informative talk, as well as is directly aligned with our new mission statement, and you already cover a number of products. So there is a lot of, and also thankful for the all the participants and questions. I also want to thank Dr. Paul Nicholas for gracefully accepting my invitation to introduce Krista. And one more thing in terms of as we move with this ACT Tech Talk series. Before I go to the next year's talk, in this year 2018, we covered total 16 talks from all areas. There is participants from the different departments inside the ACT as well as outside. So our objective was to bring the core work, groundbreaking work, which people are, team members are doing across the company, and introduce it to all the members so that we can really know what's going on and share the work, share the knowledge. So I am grateful to all the supporters with the ACT Next, my team member, as well as ACT. In ACT Next, specifically Andrew, Matt, Toby, Dave, they help to support, as well as our team, including Steve, who help us to put all this talk on the inform, as well as Jay, who again make it available. Recently, Samantha from IRC, she prepared a very nice catalog, and you will see all the detailed information, and finally you will get again redirected to these video links. So that is a one-time record that will be useful for the AC community, not now, for years to come, because this is really, as one of the missions we are doing for learning, we need to empower our team member to learn. So this will be the important resource which will get informed as well as the IRC. So one more thing in terms of today's talk, I want to mention, you break a record, there is around 73 Zoom participants. So great participations, and I think credit goes to Mirna. She helped me to extensively distribute it, because our objective is to distribute as much as possible. So she made this distribute from the research point of view. So as we begin another year, 2019, we'll come with the new series of the Tech Talks, and we started Tech Talks in January 2018. So this next talk will be by Dr. Gunter Maris, who is a senior director in advanced psychrometrics, and he will deliver his talk on statistical models and methods for educational measurement practitioners. So this will held on January 16. The venue is Lower Ferguson, and we welcome your participation for this talk. This will also we will also celebrate the first anniversary of Tech Talks. So we welcome your participation for this talk. So again, we are thankful to all the participants here, as well as the Zoom participants. Thank you very much.